I wrote a first letter the night she passed. I got home, and it was almost like a final conversation, almost, because we didn't really have that final conversation because of the way things went down. She had got rushed to the emergency. I met her there. I hung out with her until they found her a room, and she was talking. She was weak, in pain, but she was talking before they found a room for her. And so I sang to her. I talk a little, but she, get some rest. We were waiting for a room for probably about 4 or 5 hours. And so when they finally did find a room, I think it was about 4 a.m., they told me that I couldn't be in the room, that I could come back the next morning at 10. And so as I walked with her, as we're wheeling her to her room, we get to a point where, okay, she's going left and I'm going right, or vice versa. And so I told her I loved her. She said she loved me. And then as they started rolling her away, I yelled out, "Behave yourself." And she yelled out, "You behave yourself." Not strong, but obviously enough that I can hear it. That was the last words I heard from her. When I came back a few hours later, at 10, they said she had gotten progressively weaker. And sure enough, she was too weak to even talk. She was barely strong enough to keep her eyes open. And so, for those next 2 days, I sat with her, reading to her, singing to her. But she didn't have, the abilities to speak. So, in writing those letters, it was kind of a way to continue a conversation. And it was helpful for a while. It was helpful in some aspects because what I would write, I could hear how she'd respond. I knew her well enough to pretty much get an idea what she would say. Even some of the jokes I would write, and know that she'd be amused by them, but she wouldn't find them too funny because she already knew all my jokes. So it was, and I didn't do that. I started that daily, but it wasn't. I didn't do that for long. I didn't. Pretty soon it was like 3 times a week, and at some point, I think about the 8th month actually. No, I think it was the 7th month. I think it was July. I think it was around July 4th that I had to say this is going to be my last one. And it felt like I was leaving her. It felt, but at the same time, I had already, in the months leading up to that, I had already come to the realization that she was never going to read these. She was never going to see them. She was never going to respond. She was never even going to be touched by the fact that I sent those, or that I wrote those. So it wasn't going to be that difficult to stop. Although there still was a part of me that felt like, that I was leaving her, that I was abandoning her, so to speak. But, obviously, that's not the case, and I had already come to that conclusion. So it helped in some aspect, because it was a way to continue the conversations. But at some point, it stopped, mainly because of the fact that I was just rehashing, like, it was the same thing, and nothing new was going on in my life, and so it was just a rehash, and so it wasn't that difficult to stop.